Well, hey everyone, my name is Nathan Jones, and if you're new here, welcome. I like to talk about all things movies, specifically Blu-rays. If you're not new here, it's been a bit since I've been here. This is the first video of 2024, and I've been trying to watch as many 2023 movies as possible in preparation for this video. But from what I've seen, this is going to be my top 10 Blu-ray and top 10 4Ks single discs of the year. If you are curious about my box sets, I have a link down in the description where I covered that not too long ago, and I talked about my favorite box sets of the year. But yeah, I wanted to distinguish the two and go from there. But yeah, there's been a lot of things going on in life, and I've just been very busy. I've had a little bit of illness, just traveling as well, and trying to catch up on movies. So it's been a bit, and I'm trying to get back into the YouTube stuff. But regardless, I want to know, before we jump into this list, what are some of your favorite Blu-ray and 4K discs of the year? I would love to see your top 10 of either format, and go down in the comment section down below and just let me know what your favorites are. So let's actually just jump into Blu-ray, and these are in no particular order. So these are just some of my favorites of the year, just depending on the presentation or just the fact that it exists, right? Because some films never make it to Blu-ray, nor do they make it to 4K. So yeah, so enjoy my list, and I would love to know what yours are, and I'll see you in a second. All right, so starting off with the first two discs are actually two discs from Radiance Films, which is a relatively new label. They started last year, actually, and so they had quite a bit of a year as well. I talked about the Casa Nostra set, and I just enjoyed pretty much most of the discs I picked up and watched, but there's a few that actually really pop up in my mind, and the big one is number one in the collection right here. The Working Class Goes to Heaven. This is a phenomenal film. Elio Petri is the director of this film. It came out in 1971. It's in Italian. This is actually the Region B version. I believe that there's a multi-region, but I might be wrong. But I have the Region B version here. But it's a fantastic film. It's a socio-political film. Obviously, in the early 70s and late 60s, there was a lot of tumultuous things going on in the world, and also in Italy with workers' rights, because obviously they're dealing with post-World War II and the defeat of the Axis powers, and so the workforce is trying to find an identity, and we start following our main character here, who's played wonderfully by Maria Volante. I can never say his name incorrectly, so I just always like to try to read it. But regardless, he's a fantastic actor. I love him in Investigation of a Citizen Above Suspicion. Every time I've seen him on the screen, he's like a firecracker. Honestly, he might go anywhere in any direction, and he's just like that in this film. So he is our hero, I suppose. Even though he is not much of a hero, he is definitely a flawed person, and he gets fed up with his work, his factory work, and a lot of events happen in this film, but it is so worth watching, and also just seeing the great work that Radiant's done with this film in the restoration process. This is the first time it came out on Blu-ray. And also, there's just really fantastic features on it, and I highly recommend people pick it up. It's got that Obi strip on here, and here is the film itself with the booklet. I believe the limited edition is no longer available, but the standard edition is, and the booklet that comes with the limited edition is quite nice, but it also has some alternate art as well. So if you want to, with the original poster art, go from there. I really love this film. This is definitely one of the best releases of the year, and I definitely wanted to start out with this, talking about Radiance and talking about their year one. It's been fantastic. So actually, speaking of them, let's just move on to the second title I have. All right, so the second title I want to talk about from Radiance is Spy Number 10. It is a French film and is directed by Alain Cavalier, and I'm talking about Fill Her Up with Super. I've talked about this a couple times on the channel. This is actually one of my favorite films from Radiance so far. In this early lineup, we have Spy Number 1 and 10. These came out relatively, near each other in the first few months of the year, but I love this film. A lot of it's a hangout movie, really. The people in this film aren't really likable necessarily, but also but they are relatable, and I think that's the reason why I think I like this film in particular. It feels more like one of those theatrical performances where you're just really just sitting there as a fly on the wall, listening to people have conversations about everyday subjects, and going on a road trip is exactly what these guys do. But yeah, it's a fun film. There's definitely some dated things Things. This came out in 1976. So there's definitely some things that we don't talk about today, or, things have changed a little bit here as well with, cultural relevance. But it's just a fun film. I really like it. I don't think it's for everybody. Not everybody I've talked to has enjoyed it, but I don't know, it clicked with me, and I quite enjoyed it. And just like with Working Class Goes to Heaven, there is the limited edition right here. There's two of the dorks right there. It also comes with the other version there that it is in French. And so, yeah, this is just a film that I adore, and honestly, I can't wait to go back to. And honestly, I think you should check it out yourself. Year one for Radiance, big success. All right, next we're going to move to the BFI and to a release that I adore. And I'm a big folk horror fan. I have been for quite some time, and my friends over in the UK actually pushed me into this. This is a Region B release. It's from the BFI, of course. It's Inman. Man, this movie by Mark Jenkins, it's really hard to describe. It's a very visual film. It's a psychedelic film. It's a folk horror film at the end of the day. And this is actually 1973 is when this film is set in, but it came out a couple years ago in 2022. Yeah, so this is a very interesting film, and it's very hard to describe. I just mentioned all those things. It's a photogenic film. It's one that you just experience. So it's really it's a very stylish film, but it's also horrific at the same time. And I love it. It comes with a DVD, even, with the Blu-ray, and it also comes with a booklet. But, man, if you've not seen this movie, I at least recommend you checking it out in some manner, if you can, figure it out streaming-wise. But if you have a Region Free player, pick this up. It's fantastic, especially if you're into folk horror. So, Inman, it's definitely high on my list. That's why I wanted to bring it here. All right, so next we're going to talk about Vinegar Syndrome, who had a fantastic year as well. But I want to talk about one particular thing that kind of stuck out like a sore thumb for me that I didn't expect Vinegar Syndrome to put out. And I'm talking about Flesh and Fantasy. And this movie is a 1943 film, I believe, right? 43? Yeah. 1943, there it is right there. Vinegar Syndrome doesn't really put out things like this, but this is a horror film, of course, with a great cast right here. Anna Lee, I'm going to go backwards. Charles Winninger, Thomas Mitchell, Robert Benchley, Robert Cummings, Betty Field, Edward G. Robinson, Barbara Sandwick, and Charles Boyer. This movie is a horror anthology, of all things, and so it has various stories, but it's one of the earliest adaptations of a horror anthology that we would see. And man, was it so much fun. And like I said, Vinegar Syndrome, I didn't expect for them to put this one out, but they did. And it's restored in 2K with some 35 millimeter dupe negatives and a couple of audio commentaries and a few other fantastic featurettes. But it's just a really cool film with various stories here being told. And I love early horror. I love Universal horror and things along that ilk. And so this is definitely something that was high on my list, and I wanted to mention it for the end of the year. All right, so next I'm going to be talking about a Disney release, and normally Disney is not too good with the physical media. They're pretty bad, but they mark their 100-year anniversary with a line of films, mostly their old classics. But one thing, two things really stuck out in particular, and it is the Mickey and Minnie shorts. And I really love these classic stories. I watched a lot of these growing up on VHS. I watched them on, just various cable channels, of course, growing up. But having them on Blu-ray, of course, they were available on DVD at one point. But just having them more readily available is just really cool. And I like how they're physically available. And I think that's the reason why I wanted to bring them up, because these stories, they're timeless, honestly. And, having Volume 1 here and Volume 2, which I've also seen, they're just really fun stories. And they're just really short. And it just shows how animation has progressed throughout the years. But at the end of the day, the reason I chose this was it is just great that it's available physically. And, it has a lot of those classic stories that I think a lot of us grew up with, and having it readily available for people on physical media is just a really big, strong dub, in my opinion. So definitely check out Mickey and Minnie, 10 Classic Shorts, Volume 1, Volume 2. If you're into those things, this is definitely one that's a little bit iffy on the list, but I highly recommend checking these out. All right, the other 5 are in Criterion's hands, and Criterion is one of my favorite labels of all time. It's actually the first boutique label that I really got into, and so I have a couple of things from them. First, I want to talk about one that really surprised me, and I absolutely was blown away by how much chaos is in this movie. It's 1968. It's spy number 1179. I'm talking about Targets. Boris Karloff is in this film. He's in part of the story. There's another story as well I believe Tim O'Kelly is the other person. And I'm not going to get too much into the story because it's definitely worth watching and seeing how things unfold. But it's pretty much two stories, kind of simultaneously going together. An old man in Boris Karloff, who's an old Hollywood star, who's kind of just living his day to day in retirement, trying to figure things out. And then this like the old, this young guy who has a family, Tim O'Kelly, and things start going awry in his life, and you kind of see that pretty quickly. But at the end of the day, these stories collide and in a fantastic manner. But the fact that this exists, and I never heard about it up until this year. Actually, I think late last year when I think BFI was going to put it out. But regardless, man, I'm just happy this exists, and fantastic transfer as well from Criterion. I definitely recommend people checking this one out. Definitely try to go into this blind if you've not seen it. It's just one of those films that you'll just not forget, honestly. And that makes it very impactful. So yeah, definitely Targets is going to be at the end of my year list. All right, so moving on to my favorite movie year, 1987, to a film I've seen clips from. I've heard the song, of course, but I've never expected it to come out on Blu-ray from Criterion. I'm talking about Labomba, and man, I didn't expect this, biopic to really impact me as much as it did. But it's directed by Luis Valdez. It's got Isaiah Morales, Danielle von Zernick in it, Rosanna DeSoto, and Elizabeth Pena, as well as Lou Diamond Phillips as Richie Valens, who is obviously playing a real life, star who died tragically early on. I may have given something away if you've not seen it, but if you don't know this, this story, it's a little late to the party on here. But he goes through his rise to fame and his struggles with his family and his success. And so it's just a really fantastic film with really great music, really great acting, very emotionally compelling. And if you've not seen it before, like myself, this classic that a lot of people have seen, it's really just a breath of fresh air seeing this restoration. It's a 4K digital restoration and was just a fantastic looking one too. And I loved a lot of the montages that happened in this film, even though some of them looked a little off in terms of the visual quality of it. But at the same time, the director himself was the one who was in charge of the restoration. But I'm just happy it exists. And it's got some really great special features in it as well. And of course, it has, a little booklet and the Blu-ray itself. But yeah, Labomba, big release of 2023. It's definitely one that I wanted to mention, and definitely one of my favorite Criterions of the year. All right, so next I'm going to talk about 3 films, actually, from a new line that I'm just really high on, I suppose. And I'm talking about the Janus Contemporary line. And I want to talk about the 3 favorites of mine this has really stuck out for me. The first is The Innocent. The Innocent is just a really great release from 2022. It is in French and has some English in it, but it has all the types of genres you want. It's a part-time rom-com, thriller. There's a lot of things going on to this. It's kind of a mystery thriller for the most part, but it's also just dealing with a bunch of delinquents who are kind of idiotic and in the situations they get themselves in. But it's a super fun one. Definitely recommend checking this one out. But I just really love this Janus Contemporary line, even though it is definitely bare bones minimum in terms of special features, but it has a cheap price in terms of when it goes on sale. It usually costs about $15, which is really fantastic, because a lot of these films that come out in Cannes or maybe the International Film Fest in Toronto, a lot of these films don't really make a physical media release. So just having the fact that there is a label putting them out, a contemporary label, it's fantastic to me. I think this is great to have a physical media, focused on kind of the new things that are coming out that are definitely not going to be put out on physical media. So yeah, The Innocent, that's my first one. Second one I want to mention is probably my favorite of the bunch, but it's AO. It's about a donkey. Also came out in 2022. It had, Best International feature in Poland when it was nominated. But man, this is a Balthazar kind of tribute to this film. This film is in Polish, Italian, English, and French with some English subtitles. But this film just strains on your heart, and you can just see, just through the eyes of a donkey, just going through a journey of how this donkey is, being passed from owner to owner and circumstance to circumstance and situation, and just the environment in general, kind of enclosed in around him. And it's a really great look from a perspective that we normally don't see. Obviously, it's definitely crafted by a filmmaker who, focused on that, but it's something we don't think about. And I really love this film. It's very empathetic. It's very warm. It's very sad as well. And I definitely recommend people check out if they've not seen this film before. Check out AO. And the last film we're going to talk about Blu-ray wise is another Janus contemporary and another one that came out in 2022. It is The Eight Mountains here. This is an Italian film set in the Alps, but it's kind of near the Italian and French border. But this film starts off with two friends who are childhood friends growing up, and they kind of get separated as they grow up. And one of them returns back home after the death of his father, and they kind of rekindle that friendship. But it's a very subtle movie. It's very slow, but it is a gorgeous film. Obviously, it's the Alps are in the background, but they go up into the Alps to decide, like, to make a cabin together. And that's something that is just, I don't know. There's these subtle moments in films like this that just speak volumes, and this is definitely one of them, and definitely going to round out my list for the top 10 Blu-rays of 2023. So now let's jump into the 4K discs. All right, so the first in the 4K list is one that took a lot of awards when Oscars came around, but also is just a fantastic film. It's on Netflix, so if you want to see it, you can check it out there. But it has a really great digibook pack. It's All Quiet on the Western Front. This is a remake of the 1930s film, but man, oh man, this movie is just gorgeous. It's one of the best 4Ks I've ever seen, and it's also just a really fantastic release. So there it is right there. It's kind of got the booklet in the middle with some light paper, and it also has the special features on this other side on this disc on the Blu-ray, as well as the film itself. So it comes with Blu-ray and 4K, but this is one of the best looking 4Ks of the year. And I definitely had to talk about it because this is a unique packaging, a unique film, and one that I will not forget because of how harrowing this movie is. All right, so moving along back to Criterion, actually, to a 4K that we've been expecting for so long, and we finally picked it up. We finally got it released. It's After Hours from Martin Scorsese. This came out in 1985. Wow, this is a one night of really bad things and bad decisions and circumstances gone wrong for our main character, and we see it unfold, and it is just a funny film. It's a dark film, and it's also really sad and tragic, but it's got so much life to it that it's going to keep you on the edge of your seat. I've never seen this film before up until this point, and I'm just glad that it's finally on 4K. But it looks great. I think this transfer is fantastic, and Criterion put bunch of special features right here into this disc, and it's just one that honestly I've returned to a few times actually just for special features and just this aesthetic. And I love the color design of this green and pink kind of black design here, and just one of the best releases from Criterion from 2023. It's just, I think, one of the best 4K releases of the year, period. And I'm just glad to finally have it in my collection. All right, so next we're going to talk about a film that really surprised me. Mainly, I've never seen this movie before. I've seen clips from it for quite some time. I'm talking about a movie from 1982, and that's Dragon's Lair. Surprisingly, this movie was just a fantastic 4K release, and I just didn't expect it to be that. It's just it's a studio release, and one that came with a bountiful bit of special features. And I did not expect this to, look as good as it does, but man, oh man, does this film look fantastic. Obviously, the special effects are a little, it's the early 80s, so, give it some credit. But at the same time, this movie looks just stunning. And honestly, that's just something I didn't expect for a film like this. It's more of a cult classic film for a lot of people, and it's one that I didn't expect to get enough attention. So I definitely had to mention Dragon's Lair and how fantastic this release is. So if you're into fantasy and D&D and all those things, which I am, like Magic the Gathering, Dragon's Lair is right up your alley. All right, so next is a release that actually has 3 discs in it, which is kind of insane. But it's a release that I think is just a gorgeous upgrade. And it also has a black and white version on it, too. I'm talking about The Mist. And I actually have the standard 4K here. I don't have the Steelbook, but both of them look fantastic. But man, oh man, I just didn't expect The Mist to look as good as it does and sound as good as it does and be jam-packed with special features. That's actually one of the reasons I brought this up, is because the special features put on this is kind of absurd. There's 4 discs, actually, 2 of 4Ks and 2 Blu-rays, and it has the black and white versions of it plus the special features. So it's just a jam-packed thing. It's a very thick release with multiple discs in it. And it's a sad film. If you've seen this movie before, you know how it ends. but man, oh man, is it worth the journey. The Mist is a fun 2000s horror film that I recommend people check out, and especially getting this version right here, the 4K, with multiple editions and a stacked special features catalog. All right, next is another studio release that really surprised me, and I actually just recently rewatched this for the, I've seen this maybe a few times, but it's Training Day with Ethan Hawke and Denzel Washington, of course. Man, this story is very impactful, really fun, but also really dark as well. So this is just a fantastic film, of course, right here. If you've seen Training Day, you know exactly how this story kind of goes, but this is part of the 100 years of Warner Brothers releases, and this one had a really fantastic upgrade, and that's one that a lot of people have talked about. The upgrade on here, the HDR, and the audio, it just took it up a notch, and just a really fantastic transfer, and one that has some really good special features on it as well. But yeah, it's one that's unforgettable. Denzel's performance is pretty it's a lot of people know about it, right? And Ethan Hawke is great in it too, as this bumbling cop on his first day, right? Training Day 4K, highly recommend you upgrading if you haven't seen this edition. It's definitely worth picking up. All right, so next we're going to go to Cauldron Films, to a filmmaker that I've actually recently just kind of gotten back into. I've watched a few films from this director, but I haven't seen this one up until this point, and I'm talking about Lucio Fulci and City of the Living Dead. This movie is wild. The plot is all over the place. There's a lot of deaths. It feels like a slasher film, honestly. It feels like it's very reminiscent of some Giallos, but obviously with a Fulci touch. And it's just got some horror elements in it as well, some gothic horror elements, honestly. It's a big medley of things, honestly, and it's really fun, but it's also really gross, because if you know Lucio Fulci, he makes gross films. But great special features here as well, and just great, transfer here. Honestly, I've been picking up the Lucio Fulci 4Ks. I've got 4Ks like Zombie on the shelf, and it looks fantastic. But yeah, lately I've been just really enjoying Lucio Fulci and his crazy horror that he has, and City of the Living Dead. This is a great transfer, and I definitely wanted to recommend it, talking about the top 4Ks of 2023. So moving on from Cauldron Films, we're going to go to Blue Underground, to another 4K horror film that really stuck in my mind, and one that just does not leave. And I'm talking about Dead and Buried. This movie is it's very, very good. And I also love the twists and turns of it. Like Targets, I'm not going to mention too much, because this is just a movie you got to watch. It's crazy town. Some things are happening on in the background. You'll figure out, piece things together, but it's a zombie movie of sorts. Just some really weird stuff going on in this town, and you got to kind of figure out why. So yeah, Dead and Buried. Check out this 4K. It's a great release, and it looks fantastic too. All right, next I want to talk about another studio release, one that I just recently watched for the first time. A lot of people talked about this movie being one of the best 4Ks of the year, and I have to agree, it looks fantastic. I'm talking about John Wick 4. I just have the normal studio here release. I don't have the Steelbook or anything like that. But man, oh man, Keanu Reeves in this role, he just keeps pushing it, honestly, to the top. I'm still a favorite for the one. The first John Wick is still my favorite film of his, but it just keeps getting more and more outlandish, and there's some really crazy shots in here. This is definitely one of the most extravagant pieces of it, and I think Keanu Reeves has just put his heart and soul into this role, and it just looks fantastic too. This is definitely one of the best looking films of the year, regardless of the 4K release or not. This is definitely a film that I think everyone should check out, especially if you're into action films and the like. But yeah, John Wick 4, you can't talk about a top 10 list without mentioning this film. All right, so next we're going to talk about Kino Lorber, and they put out some really great 4Ks this year, but one in particular stood out in my eyes, and it's one of my favorite films of all time, actually, and I'm talking about Night of the Hunter. Charles Laughton, this is the only film he's made. Robert Mitchum, Shelley Winters is in here. There's a great cast in here, but at the end of the day, this movie is terrifying. It's one of the most terrifying films out there. It definitely is very unlike it of its time, because this came out in 1955, where films were not like this when they came out. But this movie, it has a great transfer. I think Kino Lorber does a really great job of putting this together. It's got some new audio commentaries on here with some isolated sound effects in 4K. But yeah, it's a scan of the 35 millimeter negative, so it looks fantastic, and this is a great release. It's a good upgrade from the Criterion. It's not much of an upgrade, but it is definitely an upgrade, and you can definitely see the depth of the HDR kind of pull forth. So I really love Night of the Hunter and this film, and if you want to pick this up, I would definitely recommend upgrading it from the Criterion, or if you've not seen it for the first time, pick up this disc from Kino Lorber. It's a phenomenal one. And rounding out this list, another Manfer Syndrome release on 4K, one of H.P. Lovecraft variety. I'm talking about From Beyond. I just watched this for the first time, so it's really fresh in my mind, but man, oh man, what a crazy amalgam of things going on in this film, and I love it. The flesh and just the the bonkers science in here is just really fun. I really love it. So yeah, it comes with this film, but holy moly, this is like one of the most stacked special features discs. I haven't dived into everything, but man, oh man, this come with a lot of things. But Stuart Gordon at his finest, he does a really fantastic job of putting in the gore and also the silly science as well, and mashing them together, and very much like his box set, just drinking blood from the noggin, right? Very heady stuff as well, but man, Manfer Syndrome just knocked it out of the park this year, and this is one of the creme de la creme discs that I like to argue is one of my favorites. So, for the end of the year, that is my top 4Ks and Blu-rays. I would love to know what yours are. Let me know in the comment section down below what your favorite discs of the year were. What have I missed? You know, I'm sure there's a few things that I haven't seen yet, or haven't picked up, or just not on my radar. I would love to know in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'll be doing this kind of every other week, probably. I'm going to just kind of cycle into YouTube a little bit slowly as I kind of get back into the groove of things. But I want to say thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Give it a like, comment down below, share, hit the notification bell, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. I'm not jonesing around.